My Nana was 85 years of age when she died at home, and I was 13 years old. She left all her belongings to my mother, who left them to me, pieces from Craig Hall, lustre jugs, etc., and her own tea service, with such a good teapot for making tea. I've hardly used the milk and sugar bowl. Also my mother's tea set, Wedgwood, that's at Lucille's. My mother was looking after Nana before she died. She asked me to stand beside Nana while she went for warm milk for her. And while my mum was doing this, Nana opened her eyes, looked at me and said, "You've always been a good girl to your Nana." Then she looked straight ahead, up where the window was, and smiled so happily and said, "Hello, Benjamin." My mother came in, then I asked her, "Who's Benjamin?" And she said, "Nana's younger brother, who died young, and that he and Nana had been very, very close." All Nana's wrinkles smoothed out, and she looked so beautiful and happy. My mother was sad that she hadn't been present and wondered why me. My mother was psychic and used to read her friends' cards and tea leaves for fun. They always asked her to. She'd also tell fortunes at Red Cross fetes to help make cash for the good cause. Eventually it bothered her that she knew what would happen to people, so she told me she'd stopped when I asked her to read my cards on her visit to us in Africa when Jonathan was 3 weeks old. I wish I hadn't asked her, because she gave in and read my cards and saw a death and said, "I hope it's not my own." But she knew it was her own. And I never saw her again. She died of cancer just before Lucille was born, just as she was going to retire, and hated the thought of not teaching anymore, as she was a born teacher. My wonderful experience of being with Nana and seeing her going off with Benjamin has stood me in good stead all my life, and I feel grateful that I had that proof of life after death experience. I loved her so much that I must have been in shock after I lost her, going to school to sit exams. The head of school contacted my mother and said I had handed in a blank paper and I didn't have any consciousness of this. I remember feeling I had lost my father and now Nana, and I felt left behind and was wishing I was away with them. So looking back, I must have really suffered at this time. Only my mother and myself left, except for Nana's husband for a while. He had been in the Boer War and brought back all sorts of curiosities from Africa, snakes and jars, and the assegai which Jonathan has. When I was playing in my sandpit in the garden, I remember him falling over my wee wooden horse onto the grass and thinking it was my fault he had fallen over it, and running up the garden to tell all about him lying there. It was a stroke, and he was bedridden for years at home. We had Rita the maid, who slept in, to give a hand with everything in the house. I liked Rita. I tried to teach her French when I had it at school at first, but she couldn't remember, and I was sorry she couldn't. Nana's husband was nice, but after his stroke he couldn't speak or do anything but lie in bed. So sad. So no conversation. So different nowadays. Nana always hoped he would go first, but didn't.
Wings over Africa. My venture into the unknown began on the evening of July the 1st, 1961. My Ultima soul was reached on the afternoon of July the 4th, as we flew into Salisbury of southern Rhodesia over beautiful hilly country. I looked down upon scattered native compounds with their little round thatched huts, and upon good farms with fine homesteads. Soon I was reunited with my family and introduced to its 2 new members, one of whom refused to allow the importance of my arrival to disturb his afternoon. As I drove through a modern, well-planned city, I felt that there could be no more thrilling story in the annals of adventure and romance than that of the occupation and settlement of Rhodesia by Cecil Rhodes and his pioneers. 60 years ago, southern Rhodesia was a vast veldt teeming with animal and human wildlife, a veldt of savagery and bloodshed. The most powerful native tribe was the Matabele, whose chief corral or town was the site of present-day Bulawayo. The rest of the country was inhabited by peaceful pastoral tribes called Mashonas. These tribes were constantly tormented by the Matabeles and in danger of extermination, when a pioneer party organized by Cecil Rhodes, the Kimberley diamond magnate, Prime Minister of Cape Colony and a great empire builder, reached the site of present-day Salisbury in 1890. Said Kipling of Rhodes' relationship with Rhodesia, "Living he was the land, and dead his soul shall be her soul." I shall not dwell upon the various clashes between black and white, as these are familiar history. Since then there have been no conflict. Indeed, the relationship between the 2 races has become steadily more harmonious.